So here we are looking at yellow belt technique, and again, technique is just a compilation of all of the skills we gather from our drills. Alright, so this area is top position. We ride from controlling a wrist or controlling a foot hook, both gained from a 4-point breakdown. The first turn and pin we're looking at is a wrist and half.
Okay, so there's lots of ways we can get a wrist. If I drive him to this elbow right here, I can catch a wrist right here. If I go here and he tries to wing my arm, I can catch his wrist right there and slide back. Okay? From here, if he goes to my belly, I catch a wrist right here. Whenever I can control a wrist, he's in a lot of trouble. So I'm going to catch a wrist. The other way we traditionally just catch a wrist is with our 4-point breakdown. I 1, 2, 3, 4, catch a wrist. Right here, now I have a wrist. So what I'm going to do once I have the wrist is I'm going to put it into a 2-on-1. I'm going to have a cross wrist. Now this is a 2-on-1. Cross wrist, 2-on-1, 1-on-1. What I eventually want is a 1-on-1, a wrist, and a half. From here, once I have my 2-on-1, I'm going to 2-on-1, I'm going to break into his belly, right here, and I'm going to look to put in a half on the opposite side. So I have this wrist, I'm going to give it to my other hand, I'm going to put a half in right over here. I'm going to hop sides. As I hop sides, I'm keeping his shoulder and his head in the mat, right here, so he can't look away. If he can't go away from the half, I'm going to pin him. And how I pin this thing, slide this way. How I pin, I'm under his shoulder and his head's in the mat. There's a little gap, a little triangle in his neck, between the mat. I'm going to slide my arm through that. I'm going to try and make a knuckle sandwich. My knuckles are the meat between my chest and his chest. So I'm sliding right through this hole. This arm goes through that hole. I'm going to get it as deep as I can. Knuckles, making a sandwich in between our chests. If I have to let go of the wrist at this point, that's fine. But I want it as tight as I can get. I want to be a branch on the tree. And I want to lift his head with my elbow. And this is what we call sinking the half.
The next turn and pin is a knee block half.
We catch our 2-on-1 right here, break him down, throw our half, hop sides, but now we need to keep his head and his shoulder in the mat and he builds up to his base. So now he's on his base. What I need to do is block his knee, and this whole time I keep this wrist. So I have my half, I have this wrist, he's on his base now, I'm going to block his knee, I'm going to pull his head, and I'm going to slam his shoulder into the mat. So I pull, and I slam his shoulder and slam his head. Then I put my hand, snake it through the hole, knuckle sandwich. Right there to finish it.
Next, we have a crab half roll.
And as he sits out here, I'm going to sit down with him. Okay? As I sit down with him, what I'm going to try and do is pull him back. This is a crab half roll. So right now I'm in a crab position. I'm going to pull him back, try and stretch back, put this leg over, slam his shoulder and his head in the mat. Right there. Keep this stretch, crawl on top, and sink. The whole time his shoulder and his head need to be stuck in the mat so that it can sink. If they come up, then I won't have it. Building up. Let's say I just crab halved him here. He's pushing back. I crab. I half.
We also have a double boots power half.
What I want is I want all the weight up on his hands so that there's space for my legs to come in. I'm going to put in my toe here. Then I'm putting in my other toe there. Just my toes. My heels are right up in his groin. And now I'm going to pull underneath his arms and push my feet back as hard as I can. I put in double boots or ride high in the thigh, I want him flat. So now he's flat. I'm going to put, my legs are right underneath his hips, so when I arch, I lift his legs off the ground. I'm going to put all my weight up on his face. If I have a half in, I can work from there, but I don't need it. What I want to do is isolate one hand. So I'm going to go cross wrist, grab the hand. I go wrist, I try to pull it out, especially if he's clamming up real tight. I might need to use two hands and pull this out. But then I want to slide underneath. I go wrist, I go elbow, and I want to straighten this arm up to here. I want to try and straighten the arm, and I'm right underneath his elbow as I do this. Then I want to take my hand, put it on the back of his head, and do a push-up. As I do a push-up, I'm going to keep his elbow towards my chest, and I slide it over his head. If the other arm is posting, I just push it out. I need to let go at least with my left leg so I can push, but I can throw both legs out here and turn them over.
We can put all of our halves together into a half drill.
I'm going to do a wrist and half, a knee block half, crab half roll, and then double boots power half. So right here, I catch, drive him forward, switch hands, punch my half. Finish my half right here, sitting to the mat, getting real heavy on his head. He goes back to his belly, I let him back. Then from here, I'm going to leave my half in, but he builds up to his base. I knee block, I'm going to pull him and slam his shoulder and his head back to the mat, slide it in. He's going to build up again. As he builds up, he pushes back. He sits back, he sits out. Again with the crab half, he sits out. Right now I have all the weight on his hands. If he gets his head up and his weight back towards his butt, then I crab him. Right here. Right there, he builds up again. From here, I'm throwing in boots. One boot, two boots, stretch him. He's flat. Isolate a hand, stretch it, push up, finish.
From a foot hook, we can pin our opponent in a corkscrew.
4-point breakdown, I'm going to get to a foot hook. So right here, 1, 2, 3, 4 foot hook. Now from here, I'm going to grab onto him. I can keep this wrist if I want. I'm going to jump my belt buckle on top of his back, right here. And I want to knee him up in the ribs. So I'm going to lift with this leg, with the foot that's hooked. I'm going to knee him in the ribs, push my belt buckle up. Now, I'm going to release the wrist, jam his elbow, and cross face and grab right above his elbow. My pinky is right above his elbow. Once I have that locked, I'm going to pull it as hard as I can so his shoulder goes down. Now his shoulder's down. From here, he's straight, so I'm going to corkscrew him over. I don't keep this foot in anymore. I let it go. I run around his head, and as I'm going around, what I want is I want this foot, that knee on the other side of his head, and I want to scrape up this arm, scrape up the arm, hook his head. Right there. So where do we start there? So once I get my foot hook, again, I'm hopping up, knee in the ribs, elbow, elbow, pull it down. He's broken down. I let go, circle. I'm pulling, keeping his shoulder flat right here, shoulder turn. I circle, stay heavy. I'm going to step over, lock, scrape up his arm. Keep pulling his bottom arm. If I can, I'm going to try and put that bottom arm. I'm going to try and put this bottom arm in my armpit. I want to scrape that up and scoop his head. Right here. If I can keep pulling this, ideally, this arm blocks that one, and scoops, and then I pin him.
We can also get a cross-face cradle from the same position.
Cross-face cradle. So right here, I'm deep, I catch, knee up the butt, hook, jump up, elbow, block, right here. Now, a lot of times I'll knock him over first, but I can try and hook this cradle from here. In order to get it locked, my head's going to be a kickstand. So my head's going to act like a kickstand. What I want is to get his head to his knee. So my head acts like a kickstand, and I'm going to catch my own wrist. I'm going to catch right here around his leg. So right here, my head acts like a kickstand until I get my hands locked. Once those hands are locked, now I'm going to throw my body over to the other side. From here, depending on his pressure, I can take him 3 ways. I can bump him back, drive my knee as far up as his back as I can, so I roll him up onto his shoulders, or I prefer pushing his hips away, which brings his shoulder down, putting my head in his temple.
If we put these together, we can have our cross-face drill.